My parents booted my sister, her fiancé, and baby for a poly couple, then laughed when I asked for a family-only vacation, so I burned the invite. This post will probably be long, but I'll try not to ramble too much and hope it's easy to follow. But I'm not sure how to approach the problem at hand, so I need some help. For reference, my parents are swingers. I discovered they were swingers soon after I graduated from high school in 2016. I never really had an opinion on the subject until recently. I don't care what happens behind closed doors, but I don't want to see it in person. I realize it makes me sound like a nasty person, but I've always accepted them for who they are. It's just strange to see my parents make out with other individuals in front of a gathering of people. Anyway, they've been in a relationship with another couple for almost 2 years. The other couple, recently moved in with my parents after losing their house and being unable to locate another place in time. My parents kicked my sister, her fiancé, and their baby out of the basement to give their friends more space, and they moved them upstairs to share one bedroom, which is a little 12 by 12 room. The friends have also indicated that they are another pair of grandparents for my niece, referring to themselves as grandma, insert name, and papa, insert name. My sister and her fiancé feel uncomfortable with this, but my parents and their friends do not seem to mind because they are all united as one. Now, on to the trip. We were going to go on our first family vacation last year, in October 2021, but it was moved out to April of this year owing to costs from my wedding, which everyone was fine with. It was then pushed out again since my sister was in her 3rd trimester of pregnancy and unable to fly. It is now slated for February 2023. My parents informed my sister and I, as well as our significant other, that they would be bringing their friends along for the vacation. To be honest, I'm frustrated with how they've handled things with my sister and their PDA. It's made me want to stop going. As I previously stated, this is our first family trip, and I wanted it to be exclusively for the family. I'm at a loss for words, and I'm not sure how to approach the situation. We don't want to offend my parents by expressing how I, my husband, sister, and Bill feel. Any advice? Edit 1. I am married and do not live at home anymore. However, my sister, her fiancé, and the baby do. They are actively looking for locations. We live in a state where the cost of living is extremely expensive, as is the case in many other areas nowadays. And with only one source of income, they have a more difficult time finding work. Hopefully, this clears things up. Edit 2. I didn't expect this to gain so much attention, and I've read every remark and taken advice, so thank you. I am well aware that my parents are adults who can do anything they want. I never claimed that they couldn't. And I never stated I wasn't against their relationship with the other couple. They call themselves swingers, but you could argue they have a polyamorous relationship. My concern is how they ram it down everyone's throats. I don't care what they do privately behind closed doors. However, when I see the PDA and other things they do to each other in public, I become uncomfortable with the situation. They keep a calendar on the fridge that lists the evenings they will swap beds and sleep with the other person. My mom, and the other woman alternate between my father and the other guy. There are also occasions when they make sexual jokes about screwing each other or randomly flash each other in our presence. At the very least, wait until no one is present before doing such things. That's the part I'm not comfortable with. Update 1. Hello everyone. A few weeks ago, I posted about my parents inviting their friends on a family vacation and promised to provide an update once I spoke with my parents. Well, I tried and it didn't go well. Also, I apologize for the delay in providing an update. I've been really battling with the outcome, and I needed time to get it all out. So on with the update. I expressed my feelings to my parents, and they were not pleased. They asked why I never brought it up, and I explained that I was good with everything until I saw it, at which point I became uneasy. They now believe that I do not accept them for who they are, and they see no problem in bringing their pals or doing other activities with them in front of everyone else. My mother basically replied that what they do is neither my concern nor anyone else's, and they may do whatever they want, which is correct. They are adults and have the right to do anything they choose, but some of their actions should be kept private and not visible to others. They also consider their girlfriend and boyfriend to be family again, which is okay. I know that many people do. And because it's a family vacation, they're still inviting them, no matter how everyone feels about it. I just want to be with my parents for a change, away from their pals and their constant squabbles. They also have no problem with their friends calling themselves grandparents to my niece. I became irritated and informed them that my husband and I would not be attending the vacation and that they could take someone else. And until people realize where I'm coming from, I won't go around. So, for the time being, my parents have been cut off. I'm quite disappointed with the decision, and it makes me sad that they would prioritize their friends over their own child. But each to their own, I suppose. Thank you everybody for your remarks. I read each one of them. Even if I didn't respond, I still read them. There were some very wonderful, supportive ones who were quite helpful, as well as some not-so-pleasant ones who were equally beneficial. So, thank you everyone. Comment 1. I am sorry about it. Did your siblings ever back you up? Oh, yes. My sister agrees with me. I'm not sure if she'll go or not. So, if she doesn't, we might take our own small vacation. Update 2. I cut my parents out of my life, and now my father could be dying. What to do? Hello everyone. I, 27F, have just come here seeking advice. Maybe. I truly don't know. I just needed a place to discuss this. There's a lot of backstory, so I'll attempt to explain as much as I can, and hopefully it won't be too confusing. I also wrote another piece about the subject a few years back, so this may be considered an update. My parents have an open polyamorous marriage. They began as swingers when I was 7, then a few years ago they met another couple and decided to simply be with them, which is okay. I'm glad they are happy. However, when the other couple, whom we'll call DNT, entered my parents' lives, they transformed. They became toxic, controlling, and just unpleasant to be around. They don't consider anyone's feelings and force their other partners into our lives, and I've determined over the last few years that I don't want to be around DNT. They were all improper in front of my sister, her family, my husband, and me on several occasions, which made us all very uncomfortable in a variety of ways. My parents evicted my sister and her family from their basement apartment and relocated them to a small bedroom upstairs in order to accommodate their other partners. My niece was also only 2 months old at the time. From there, things have only gotten worse. Don't refer to themselves as my second parents or grandparents to my son and niece, as I've begged them not to because I barely know them. My parents have frequently chosen other partners over my sister and her family, as well as myself and my family. My sister had to move unexpectedly last year, and she asked my mother if she could watch my niece because it was snowing outside. My mother said no because they were going to spend the night playing Mario Kart and didn't want any interruptions. When I told my father I was expecting, the first thing he said was, "Can we tell D&T?" I said no. After my baby was born, I went to my parents' place for a quick 30-minute visit, and as soon as I arrived, my father texted D to let her know I was there. So she and T went upstairs. My mother was holding my kid at the time, and when D and T arrived, she handed him over without asking. I was very upset. To clarify, I would have been offended if someone had simply delivered my infant to someone without first asking me. I was not unhappy solely because of the person. You should never hold a baby without the permission of the parent. My religious ceremony was quite modest, similar to a christening, and we only invited family and close friends. I invited my parents, who requested if they could bring DNT. I declined because it was for relatives and close friends, so they chose not to attend. They chose not to attend a family function because I did not want their other partners, whom they consider family, to be present, despite the fact that I have repeatedly told them this during the years they have been with DNT. Because this was for my son, I decided there would be no more stunts. They weren't going to prioritize themselves over me and my family anymore, so I cut them out. I told them that I was glad they were happy, and because I knew they loved them, I was not going to force them to choose between us. I told them I wasn't done being harmed, and that I needed time apart from them. I have not seen or spoken with my parents since April of 2024. I've tried informing my parents about my boundaries several times, but they don't listen, and they only want us to be one big happy family, which my sister and I, as well as our partners, do not desire. We both just want to be with our parents. Anyway, I received a text from my mother yesterday informing me that my father has been diagnosed with heart failure and I am overwhelmed with grief. I'm angry and sad. My heart hurts. I do not know what to do. Part of me wants to have a better relationship with my parents as long as my limits are respected. But another part of me has never felt happier or more at ease in the last 9 months. I really don't want my father to die and then regret not having a relationship with me or my son. I really hate being harmed by my parents all the time. I'm in therapy and have been working through everything for a long time, but it's still very difficult. Any input is appreciated, and I will try to address any questions you may have. Thank you for reading this, and I apologize if it was confusing. Edit. I'd like to point out that my parents have been involved with other couples I've admired. It wasn't until D&T that I had a problem, and it was their acts that drove me away. I'm glad my parents are happy, but I shouldn't have to put myself in an uncomfortable situation just to make others happy. So I decided to keep my distance in order to improve my mental health. Comment 1. This is something you must decide. They are simply reaching out because of his situation, not because they want to be better parents. They have already chosen D&T over your son. Your son does not need to view them. You can go alone to see what's going on. They want you to feel guilty and forgive them. They have not attempted to apologize. Oop. That is how I feel. I feel as if they are pressing me to see them when I am not prepared. My mom texted me a few months ago asking, "How long are you going to stay away from us? Are we still toxic?" And I feel like they're blaming me for not seeing them, despite the fact that I've repeatedly spoken my boundaries and they choose to ignore them. I know it's not my fault, but they're making me feel like it is because I want to protect myself and my son from harm. OOP provides examples of how they were inappropriate throughout the years. Examples of inappropriate behavior include them flashing each other in front of us, my father pulling down his pants and mooning the front door when I walked in because he thought I was his girlfriend, and other inappropriate actions that should not be performed in front of others, particularly your children and their spouses. Part 1. OOP for polyamorous parents and boundaries. He would place his hand on my back and I would plead not to be touched. I get quite uncomfortable because of an essay from my childhood, so I dislike being touched by numerous people. But he did that every time I saw them. I have attempted numerous times to express my boundaries, but they have not been honored. If these inappropriate acts stopped, I would not mind seeing them with my parents, but I shouldn't have to if it makes me uncomfortable. The boundaries I have expressed. I don't want them to consider themselves my child's second parents or grandparents. I do not want to see all of their obscene PDA. I am fine with a kiss, but the inappropriate behavior can wait until people are not there. My parents do not consider any of my pals to be family, and neither do I. Comment 2. You will never have the relationship you want with your parents because they are clearly selfish and will always involve their spouses. Do not feel guilty. They've never placed you first. Oop. Thank you. I needed to hear, "Don't feel guilty." This situation has had a long-term impact on me. I recently realized that I need to do what is best for me and my small family. Next story. Paternity doubts and a failing marriage. My black wife and I produced a boy who appeared too dark to be mine, so I surreptitiously obtained a paternity test, which confirmed he was mine. But when I told her about it, she labeled me a racist, and we split. I am a 29-year-old Caucasian male. My wife is 30 and black. We have 2 children, a 3-year-old daughter and a 5-year-old son. My wife became pregnant with our baby early in our relationship. We'd just been together a year. We married because she became pregnant. Fortunately, we were happy. When my son was born, I accepted him as my own. I couldn't help but notice how little he resembled me. He's noticeably darker than my wife. He doesn't appear half white. My family and friends have inquired if I am certain he is my. I had my reservations, but I decided to trust my wife. I adored my son nonetheless. When our son was 2, my wife gave birth to our daughter. I had no doubt she was mine. She looks exactly like me. She's even got my blue eyes. I never realized how powerful it is to know that a child is yours. I was able to bond with her more easily because the issue of paternity was no longer looming over us. My family also bonded with her faster. Her resemblance to me convinced me that he was not my son. I attempted to treat them equally because I consider them both my children, but I realized I was starting to dislike my son. It was unfair that I had to look after someone else's child. I also grew to despise my wife, believing she had deceived me. I eventually had a paternity test in secret. I was relieved to find that my son is actually mine. Genetics are strange. Anyway, that was 4 months ago, and my connection with my wife and children has improved significantly. I feel much more connected to him now that I know he's mine. My wife and I were overjoyed when we discussed having a third kid. I told my wife I obtained a paternity test. I hated holding the secret, and I assumed she'd understand considering how much he doesn't look like me. She flipped out. She questioned if I had ever doubted our daughter, and when I answered no, she labeled me a racist. It is not true. I didn't favor my daughter because of her whiter complexion. I knew she was mine. She also claimed that I made our son feel unloved for no cause for so many years. That's not true, I told you. Even though I didn't believe my son was mine, I treated him as if he were. My wife claims she wants to leave and take our children after the quarantine. It has been almost a week and a half, and I am still on the couch. I hoped she'd cooled down by now, but nothing has changed. She's basically unhappy with me for not trusting her and, in her opinion, depriving my son because he's black. She rarely speaks to me unless it's about the kids. I do not want to lose my family. Is it that bad that I had doubts? I still took care of him. I don't understand why something like this is destroying my marriage. I believe she is overreacting. Update 1. After being ripped apart in my first post, I had no intention of ever logging into this account again. Some recent developments have prompted me to provide an update to you all on what has been happening. I'll just get straight to it. My wife and I are currently separated. I moved out so she and the kids could remain in our home. I'm now staying with my parents. I don't get to see my children as much as I'd like. When I have a more stable living situation, we will share custody of them. It's been incredibly difficult for me and the kids. I call them every night, and they both keep wondering when I'll be home. It breaks my heart that I cannot answer that question. My kid is taking it the worst. I feel terrible that her parents have flipped her world upside down. I miss my family. I miss seeing my children every day. I miss my wife. Our relationship is currently in limbo. She says she needs time to digest and is unsure if she will be able to forgive me. I apologized in every way I knew how. At this point, all I have to do is give her the space she wants and hope she calms down. It would be terrible if we threw away all we had built. If separation has been this difficult for the children, divorce will devastate them. She appears willing to seek marital counseling. It gives me hope that we can work through this. I admit that I used to avoid holding myself accountable on Reddit. I couldn't understand how my behaviors were unintentionally harming my son. I never intended to be racist. But when you get right down to it, I did treat my son differently because of his skin color. I understood how horribly I ended up feeling guilty, because my wife had most likely informed her family why we parted. They used to think quite highly of me. Now they all undoubtedly believe I'm a racist. I have only myself to blame for that. With all the turmoil going on in the world, I realize I need to be more mindful of my behavior. Update 2. My children deserve to grow up in a family free of racism. It worries me to think of the world I'll send children into, where they may be racially profiled in most areas. I can't imagine seeing my son on the news instead of one of those other poor guys. I will never let anything stand in the way of my relationship with him again. Thanks to everybody. Update 2. I last used this account almost a year and a half ago. I stopped responding to PMs a long time ago because, to put it bluntly, I felt horrible when I was reminded of what prompted me to create this account in the first place, even if the majority of the PMs I received were not bad. I was surprised, yet thrilled to find dozens of messages still arriving as recently as a few months ago. I'd like to provide an update on my life for those people. I'm single. My ex-wife and I finalized our divorce early in 2022. We'd been back together for over a year after I told her about the paternity test. I promised to be a better spouse, and I feel I kept them, even if it didn't work. Unfortunately, things didn't go as planned, despite our best efforts, which included months of counseling, couples counseling, and private counseling for her. The truth is, she could never forgive me enough to trust me, so it wasn't going to work. Toward the end, she refused to be intimate with me in any way, so I spent most nights sleeping on the couch or in my children's rooms. We became housemates. I would have tried to fix things indefinitely, but she was willing to accept the fact that it ended long before I could. I still care deeply about her, and I believe I will for the rest of my life. I'm not ashamed to admit that I still can't get over how heartbreaking it was, despite the fact that it was my fault. I experienced severe depression, which some people would argue I deserved. As a result, I was forced to leave my previous job. I still miss her, but more importantly, I miss what we had together. I fear the day when I find out she is in a relationship with someone else, since I know it will happen eventually. I now have an apartment to myself. It took some time for me to regain my footing. My children, who are now 8 males and nearly 6 females, spend every other weekend with me, and I split their time during school breaks. My youngster is quite athletic and excels at soccer. As he grew older, I saw more of myself in him than I did when he was younger. He has not heard about the paternity test, and I hope he never does. He's a lovely child. I work hard to compensate for the time I lost while I was afraid to get too close to him. My daughter is still a mini-me. She loves me almost as much as I do her. She's also athletic. I enjoy gymnastics and soccer. I often consider how, if I hadn't needed a paternity test, they may have another sibling. This is not a healthy thing to linger on. My life took a turn I did not foresee. It is not perfect, but it is improving every day. I have a lot to be thankful for, and I remind myself of it when things are difficult. My children are all that matters. Thank you for caring.